Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. Does the underdog have a voice? Today, Mike Sullivan will give us the answer. Mike, thanks for being with us today.
Well, thank you so much, Bill. I'm looking forward to it.
Mike, your book is The Voice of the Underdog. So we always love the underdog. You're going to tell us, and I love the picture because it tricked me. I thought at first when I saw your book, it was a dog training book. I honestly thought you were going to tell us, what to do to get the dog to sit, to go, to fetch the bone, and a totally different book. Your book is about challenger brands. Can you tell us what that is?
Well, yeah. So a challenger brand, anybody who's studied marketing, they'll know that a challenger brand basically is any brand that is not number one in a category. So you could lump all following brands into the challenger brand category. We don't like to limit the thinking to that. That's not a very imaginative sort of way to think about challenger brands. And so we really define challenger brands as brands that are, they've got a culture of ambition. And so they may not be number one in the market, but they want to be. They aspire to be better than where they are in the market. They might be 10th or 50th or who knows where they are. We also talk about state of mind. The way they think about that position, being ready to be the best at something, or that maybe they already are the best at something. And I'll have some examples to share with you on that in a second here. And then state of readiness. We get back to leadership. Are the leaders in an organization ready to embrace new modalities of thinking? Are they ready to break with category convention and really excel? And so we pour a little more into challenger brands than just their marketplace position. It really has to do with their ambition, their state of mind, their state of market, their state of readiness.
And much like either a heart surgeon or an eye surgeon or a criminal attorney, you are head of and have your own agency which deals exclusively with challenger brands. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's right. That's all we focus on, Bill. Now, I started my career like a lot of folks did in the advertising world now many years ago now at a big agency working on Fortune 500 brands and names you know and all that good stuff. And there's a lot of energy. There's a lot of fun, in that. It's great to be able to throw money at problems, which literally you can do when you've got, vast resources. But there's a special and sort of unique energy that comes along with challenger brands. So, outthinking rather than outspending the competition is what we like to talk about around here. Developing our own unique strategies, not trying to replicate strategies of the market leaders. And so, we've developed an entire expertise and practice around helping challenger brands win.
I was thinking when I was going through your book, and you have some wonderful examples, and we're going to be talking about them through the show. But years ago, I thought to myself, what challenger brand do I remember? And there was a financial institution, and they had commercials, at least locally. I don't know if it was national, but their commercial was, when your bank says no, Champion says yes. And they were talking about getting a loan or a mortgage. And now here I remember this 20 years later. And it was, just kind of an iconic commercial. It's probably in the business books because he took something negative. Your bank is saying no. Hey, give him a shot. Even if it's 1 out of 10, he's got more business and you have that loan that you were looking for. Is there a favorite one that you bring up when you're talking to people?
Well, so that's a classic. And then, we all know the Avis were number 2, so we try harder. Challenger brand sort of credo, if you will. And you believe it or not, Bill, that is a 60-year-old marketing campaign. And so a lot of the younger listeners may have never heard it, but Avis, we're number 2. We try harder is absolutely famous and is still taught today in advertising schools. But the fact is, being a challenger brand, it really isn't all about advertising. So Avis, back in the day, they actually did something different, much like the bank example you just used. They did something different from Hertz, and Hertz was the number 1 at the time. They still are number 1. Avis is right in there. But what Avis did was they actually did hustle harder. Their cars were cleaner, their turn rates were faster. They had all sorts of metrics to back up that statement. And by the way, it sort of rings true for their audience, because we like to think of that as being true of challengers. Challengers really have to hustle, they have to work harder. And so that played right into that whole storyline, and it worked brilliantly for Avis all those years ago.
I'm going to embarrass myself by telling you that I do remember those commercials. I remember when they first came out, and as a marketing major in college, I was shocked to see that, what, you're saying you're number two? And of course, I remember the commercial in the airport. The football player was chasing after someone, and he was working harder. He jumped over suitcases. He ran. He jumped over the counter. Either he had to catch someone going to the plane or something, but they wanted to show you how much work they did and the effort they put in. And again, it sticks with me, as you said, 30, 40, 50 years, maybe 60 years. They're doing something right. When you talk about the best culture, is that the company's culture, the marketing culture, a specific area?
So this is a really important thing. And so the book title really is The Voice of the Underdog, how challenger brands create distinction by thinking culture first. And so I like to talk about brand and culture as, first cousins, maybe brother and sister, two sides of the same coin. Your culture, and so let me use an example to sort of explain this. You look at a brand like Chick-fil-A, which everybody knows. Whether you go to Chick-fil-A or you don't go to Chick-fil-A, you know the brand because they have managed to transcend the category. People talk about this brand. Now, why is that? It's largely driven by their culture. So Chick-fil-A, if you look at them, they're a classic challenger brand. They're fighting who? McDonald's, the 800-pound category gorilla, if you will. But if you look at Chick-fil-A and you trace it all the way back to their roots, and Truett Cathy, who was the founder of that brand, he built that brand based on his own values. And famously, those values include a devotion to the creator. And so they bring that into their organization, and they're unapologetic about it. In fact, they hold Monday morning devotional sessions for employees who care to join. The point is they're very specific about their culture. Culture tells us how to behave inside an organization. A brand is what people think it's like to do business with you. So what could be more important than thinking deliberately about the kind of culture you want to create to support the brand outputs or the way people are actually experiencing the brand? And so Chick-fil-A, for everything that it is known for and isn't known for, it is known as being the friendliest quick service restaurant in the industry. Year in and year out, they top the charts. They're number one, and number two is always 25 points, a full 25 points below Chick-fil-A, who again always leads the way. And I was listening to a radio show with Truett Cathy, the founder, years ago now, who's since passed. And the host asked him, he said, "Truett, how do you train your folks to be so kind and so thoughtful? How do you train people to say please and thank you?" And he laughed and he said, "I don't train people to say please and thank you. I hire people who say please and thank you." There's a big, big difference. And so when you've got your culture right, you've got that culture map right, and you understand who you are and what you want to give to the world as a brand, now you go out and you hire those people. You hire people to conspire with you to achieve that outcome. And that's what Chick-fil-A and so many wonderful challenger brands have done. They've gone out and they found their co-conspirators, and they built just these wonderful brands, and they're full of just all sorts of excitement, and that's what lights me up. You can probably hear it in my voice. I love these
I can hear it, and I have to back you up by saying a Chick-fil-A came into our neighborhood a few years ago, and not realizing much about it, I passed it by during the day a few times. Then one night, it was like New Year's Eve in Manhattan. The lights over there, the cars were wound around the block, and then I started to notice this was not a one-time occurrence. They weren't giving away free lollipops or Chick-fil-A's or whatever they're selling. This was standard operating procedure, that the lines were just amazing. And I think every business would hope for something like that, even half as good. They'd be happy. Oh,
absolutely. And it's become a phenomenon, and again, sometimes it's easier, I think, for smaller entrepreneurs to point to a brand like Chick-fil-A and say, yeah, they're huge. What could they teach me? Truett Cathy started with one chicken sandwich shop. This didn't start as a 6,000 unit brand. It started as one unit with a man who had a vision to create something different in the category. Or even if his vision wasn't to create something different, it was to do it his way. And that's what Truett Cathy wound up doing.
Mike, before we go further, we'd like to let our audience know, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Our guest today is Mike Sullivan. He is the author of The Voice of the Underdog, How Challenger Brands create distinction by thinking culture first. And Mike, can you tell us a website where we can find out more about this book?
Yeah, you can. Well, the book is available on Amazon.com, of course, and it's also available on our website at thelumisagency.com. So you can check out either of those sources.
And again, for our listeners, they know we like easy reads. We like the kind of book that you can pick up and learn from without having to go into hundreds of pages in small print. And this is just that. This is something I think Mike's going to tell us, I hope he is, that you can adopt for your small firm, large business, or whatever. And I think you'll be very excited to know that a lot of times, most times, in fact, I think every story in the book, the underdog is winning. So we all like to see that because most of us are the underdog, or we see ourselves that way. You have a classic example about a mattress store. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, I sure can. So this is years ago when this actually occurred, all the way back in 2009. And this is when I decided to position my own agency as a challenger brand agency. I went up to a workshop out in Silicon Valley. I was at the Silicon Valley campus of Yahoo, and we were listening to a consultant from a consultancy called Eat the Big Fish. And Eat the Big Fish is a London-based challenger brand consultancy. That's all they do. That's all they did. And at the time, they were the only ones really doing it. Well, they wrote a book called Eating the Big Fish, which I would also recommend to your listeners. It's a great read. It's a long and dense read, and it's really oriented towards marketers. But what I noticed in this meeting was that there were 100 fellow CEOs, and they were all in lean forward, completely engaged mode for 2 full days, as this guy shared his sort of thinking about challenger brands and then how to embrace and adopt sort of the ethos of challenger brands. And what I realized was, this makes perfect sense for my agency. I also met out there the CEO of a mattress retailer who became a client. He turns out he was Dallas-based, and he was stuck at around 30 stores. He just could not grow beyond 30 stores. And as we, again, think about buying mattresses. Talk about a parity product. It's a grudge purchase. Nobody wants to buy these things. They're expensive. All the things that go along with the category. And what's on top of that is that there's what I call a category overlay. When people go in and shop for mattresses, very often they feel like they're going into, buy a used car. They're not treated the way they feel like they want to be treated, and so on and so forth. Well, as we started working with this client, what we found was that he was really committed to doing business the right way. So in the industry, if you walk into a typical mattress store, you're treated as what's called an up in the auto industry. You're a mark. They want to sell you a mattress. What this guy did was he trained his salespeople to be more like consultants, and they really were. And we, through the course of our own research, we really got to know this brand. And you walk in there and you walk out, whether you bought a mattress or not, you are a more educated shopper after having an experience with this brand. And here's the thing: as a result, the return rate on the mattresses that this chain sold was way below the industry average. So you can imagine in an industry where you're creating a lot of dissatisfaction through, sales tactics that aren't great, people are going to have a lot of buyer's remorse and they're going to want to return mattresses. Well, the category just makes that notoriously difficult. And in any case, his chain was operating far below that. And so we went to him, we said, hey, look, you have operationalized really an advantage over the category that is latent. You're not doing anything with this. And that is this really low return rate. Why don't you offer customers an unconditional 1-year money back guarantee? And he about died. I mean, he did not want to do that. We had to work with him for about 3 weeks, and we convinced him that this was a good idea. He did it, rolled it out. The very next month, his sales shot up 50%. 50%. The next month, they were up another 60%, and they were sustained at that level. But here's the great thing, Bill. He had a big competitor, and I won't name them. Everybody knows this competitor. They were freaked out by this, and they tried to match it, and they had to roll it back 30 days later because they were overwhelmed with returns. They just got crushed. And so this was an absolute competitive advantage that he had created, he had operationalized inside of his organization. and it was impervious to competitors because they hadn't created that advantage. Well, he grew from 30 stores over the next 3 years to 110, and then he sold to one of those big mattress stores that probably didn't carry on his practices. I've lost touch with it since then, but it's just a classic challenger story. You do something different. You create something that's important to consumers in a way that your competitors can't easily replicate, and then you just take that to market and you go to school. And that's what he did. It was really a successful, really marketing campaign, if you will.
And I have to say, you said very quickly over there, sales increased 50 to 60%. And I just want to repeat that for our audience, because that's an enormous number. Sometimes when we hear something like that, and especially people in sales, if you can increase sales by 2 or 3 or 4%, you're happy. But when you get up to 50 or 60%, that's almost unbelievable. And I know from that story, that's why I wanted to bring it out, how just using that competitive advantage and being alert to it and turning it to his advantage by the return policy. And I guess with your skill of noticing it, it became a win-win all the way through. Did the pandemic affect the way challenger brands do things? Was it better, worse for them, or did it open up a whole new pathway?
Well, I think the pandemic affected everybody, obviously, as you well know. I think for certain challenger brands, it worked to their advantage. So we work with a lot of restaurant brands. Our restaurants, especially the ones who really embrace challenger thinking, I'm thinking of one in particular, really pivoted very quickly, operationalized their drive-throughs, started, rolling out products that they thought would be interesting. It's the challenger brands that we work with, again, certain categories are really clobbered. QSR did better than average. The brands inside that category that were operating like challenger brands, I think, did even better. And one of our clients, Golden Chick in particular, is a regional player. They never stopped their new product pipeline. In fact, if anything, they amped it up. They kept cranking. They were giving customers a reason to come to choose their brand over other brands. And they just never let off the gas. And so I think that would be the lesson there. No matter the circumstances, just keep doing what you do and do it better than anybody else.
And now, one of the, I guess, mottos you say, challengers must be willing and able to do something the competition can't or won't do to create a clear distinction. Do they actually sit there, or do you sit with them as the advertising agency and say, let's find a point of, as with the mattress company, whether it's returns or a free giveaway or balloons for children or something? Do they do that from the beginning, or does someone like you have to come in an expert and say, if we analogize it to a doctor, change your diet?
Yeah, right. No, very often it takes a third party like us to actually help a client see this. So going back to the mattress retailer, for example, the CEO, he was down in it, working this business. It never occurred to him that might be a competitive advantage. And so very often it does take somebody stepping out of your shoes and forgetting everything that you know about why something won't work, and allowing them to bring their ideas forward and help you in that respect, get some clarity. So, and it's an ongoing process too. Very often there are advantages that were advantages at one point and they diminish over time. And so you're looking for other ways to upset the market, to do things unconventionally and in a way that is relevant to your customers. Obviously, that's the most important thing.
Is a challenger brand really something different, or is it the perception? I'm thinking of Avis. That obviously is a big company. It's not a mama papa shop, even way back when these commercials ran on TV. And of course, being second isn't the worst thing. That means there's many people, many organizations under you, but we seem to gravitate toward them. Is it our perception? Is that what's happening, that we're seeing them as the underdog?
Yeah, well, I think both things can be true. So it can be that we are simply creating a perception. I think that's a less durable position to hold than something that is authentically different. So I'll give you another example, Bill. We were talking about the virtues of Chick-fil-A a minute ago. Have you heard of a water brand, a mountain water beverage brand called Liquid Death?
No.
No, and I wouldn't be surprised that you hadn't. It's really targeted to young men who are into action sports and into alternative lifestyles and all that kind of good stuff, fun stuff. with respect to sports. But Liquid Death they've taken a completely unconventional approach from the start to upsetting the water category. So, I mean, that is a huge category. It's filled up with players with brands from Coca-Cola and Pepsi and Nestle and everybody else. And Liquid Death came in and they designed their cans to look like something out of I don't know, something you might find at a heavy metal concert. Their mantra is, death to plastic, murder your thirst. Death to plastic. Their whole mission is to eradicate plastic and keep it from getting dumped into the ocean. So the cans are aluminum cans. They look like they come straight out of the action sports segment. They're exactly what you would not expect from a water company. And in fact, a kid drinking one of these things is almost upsetting. It's like, my gosh, is that kid holding a beer? What is this kid drinking? But that right in there is what is so appealing about the brand to this specific audience. And so there's a lesson in there too, and I'll talk about that in a second. But
that's when you first said it, I'm thinking the first thing I would think of what was called Liquid Death or something.
Liquid Death. That's it. So
I'm thinking, is that going to be a poison, or is that some kind of mean trick that the world is pulling on us and say, well, you should have known. It's nothing hidden. I told you it's death. And if you drink it, you're going to die. So, but apparently it's doing well. It's
doing very well. And in fact, they cultivated a huge following among young consumers. They rolled out their social program and it exceeded Aquafina's followership in the first month. I mean, they've really blown it up. So, and they're doing well. But again, they're doing well by focusing on a niche audience. It's these young male consumers who it's sort of a stick it to you kind of I'm drinking water, mom, but it looks like I'm drinking beer, over here. And that's the thing. They created a challenger brand from the beginning. They were looking at the category conventions and saying, okay, what's everybody else doing? Oh, beautiful shots of mountain streams and nice music and this pretty packaging. We're going to disrupt that. We're going to give this category something completely different. And we're focused on these consumers and we think they're going to like it. And guess what? They do.
Mike, before we go further, once again, we want our audience to know that you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan. Our guest today is Mike Sullivan. He is the author of The Voice of the Underdog, and you're hearing stories about challenger brands. Mike, where can we learn more? Give us that website.
Yeah, it's theloomisagency.com. So, theloomisagency.com. That's the name of the agency, and that's the URL for the website.
And that's your agency, so if people are interested, just so they know that you're associated with it.
That's correct, Bill. Yep.
And to our audience, if you didn't hear the first part of the show, you can always go to nccradio.org and listen to a podcast of the show. Just look for Secrets of Success and Voice of the Underdog, and you'll learn more. Mike, another story you had in there is a favorite, I think, of all of us. It's a wine known as $2 Chuck. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so $2 Chuck, it's funny, my partner, my co-author, Michael Tuggle, was really into this brand. I'm not a wine drinker personally, but what they did is they absolutely upset the wine market. It's the folks at Shaw, I believe it is, and I might get this wrong, Bill. But they essentially were creating a wine in an industrial park far from Napa Valley, doing it far less expensively than the competition. They were selling it for $1.99 in places like Trader Joe's and Whole Foods. And they wound up winning the, I think it's the California State Wine Competition. Just absolutely upset the category. And of course, prices are disguised, the manufacturers are disguised, all that good stuff. And they completely upset the market with their win. And they didn't at that point decide, okay, we're going to, now that we've won this competition, that sort of ratifies the quality of our wine, standing up to $50, $60, $70, $100 bottles of wine. They didn't just increase the price. They felt like that $2 was a fair price. Now, I think it still does sell for about $2. But yeah,
you're right. Yes.
Yeah, that's the story of $2 Chuck. And it's a great wine, apparently. People love it. And they did it by locating their manufacturing facilities well outside of Napa Valley and well outside and far away from that expensive real estate, and literally, manufacture that wine I don't know if manufacturer is really the right word for creating wine. You tell me. I'm not a connoisseur.
But of course, in wine, you always think you have to spend more and more and more.
Yeah,
and here, they're the ones beating out all the other companies for the best wine awards. And
exactly.
it was just amazing. And it certainly makes us all feel good, no matter if you're not the most handsome, the tallest, the best athlete, you can still be that one who excels. And
that's exactly
come to
right.
play.
And by the way, Bill, there are people who will not buy it because it is $2. I mean, so they know their audience and they're focused on their audience. And just because they won this competition doesn't mean they're going to shift away from their audience. In fact, they double down on it. I think that's a sort of a hallmark trait of a challenger brand. Know who you are for.
And Mike, does it always have to be a limited appeal? We see, of course, if you go to an eye doctor, you know what they take care of, or a dentist, eyes, teeth, etc. But does it help to limit the appeal like Two Buck Chuck did to an inexpensive wine? Is that a big factor in challenger brands?
Well, I think not so necessarily so much limiting the appeal, but limiting the audience and really understanding your audience. And by default, that may limit your appeal. So, in the case of Liquid Death, they're really focused on young males who have a penchant for maybe giving it to authority. Okay, that's going to be a small group. Let's build a product that really appeals to them. Red Bull's a really good example. They came into this market, from Austria. They didn't come out with a big advertising campaign. They didn't go head to head with Coca-Cola. They went and they focused on action sports. And more specifically, they focused on a subcategory of action sports called Supercross. And they started sponsoring Supercross races. Well, guess what? They started to build a really important audience inside of Supercross. So important that another energy drink came along called Monster, and they've also begun to co-opt that audience. But the bottom line is you start with a small audience and then other audiences begin to find you, essentially.
Mike, can someone who is established in business, a small accounting firm, a restaurant, a law office, can they go from their present brand, if they're listening to you or looking at your book, and become a challenger brand in their field?
Here's the good news. They already are a challenger brand. They just may not be behaving like a challenger brand. So my answer is yes, they absolutely can. It's time to start recognizing what you are. You're a challenger brand. Harness all the energy inside that and turn it to your advantage, and stop thinking of it as a disadvantage, as so many challengers do.
You've had some wonderful stories, and I want our audience to know if they're thinking of this or if even we've kind of tickled their fancy. The book is The Voice of the Underdog. It's by our guest, Mike Sullivan. He has a co-author, Michael Tuggle. Let's give him a little credit, too. And, yeah. Mike, can you give us that website once again?
It's theloomisagency.com.
And how do you spell Loomis?
Yep, Loomis.
Easy enough to remember, and a fun read, a good read, and it's certainly going to help your business, and you're going to feel good about your business. Thanks so much for being with us today, Mike.
Thank you, Bill.
I'd like our audience to know that you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan. Please join us again next week at the same time when we'll continue our journey to success.